Presentation of the 2021 Annual Comprehensive Financial Report and Audit. Please state your name. I know you're from Eide Bailey, but you said your name earlier and I can't remember it. I apologize.
No problem. I am Jamie Fay, and you are absolutely correct. I am from Eide Bailey. I'm the numbers person, so we're going to talk about numbers. I'm going to keep it pretty high level. We're going to try to talk about some graphs, some colors, some maybe not as specific information. The full annual comprehensive financial report is 187 pages. It's very standards driven. There's not a lot of comparative information in there. So what we've done tonight is put together a PowerPoint that has some of that information for you. So hopefully you find it helpful. My contact information is in the back of the PowerPoint. So if you have any questions, let me know. I am stepping in for the engagement partner. Brian Stavanger is unavailable tonight, so I am stepping in for him for the presentation. But both of our contact information is in there as well. So when we first talk about audit, we say, I'm an auditor, or I do financial statement audit. People have kind of a little bit of a confused look on their face. And I've gotten the question like, oh, well, you can see my taxes then, or you know how much I make. So we like to talk a little bit about what an audit is, what we do, what the standards are that we're following. So our responsibility as auditors in the standards is that we make sure that this book is put together that is materially accurate and follows the standards. So government auditing standards is what we follow. We obtain reasonable assurance that everything is in there right, which means we are testing things on a test basis. We don't look at 100% of things. If we did, we would just be a member of your staff at that point. So we might test 40 transactions and then say, okay, we'll do some calculations to decide, should we have this balance be here or there? Does it meet that expectation? What does that look like? So between all of those procedures, we come to a place where we can give an opinion on the financial statements to say, okay, are they materially accurate or not? So we test things on test basis. We have some discussions with management. A lot of times we'll call someone in another department or somebody from the council and just have some conversations. Talk about the risks. Every entity has different levels of risk, where those might be. So we try to focus our procedures on where are those risks, where should we be focusing our time and making sure that we're looking at the things that we should be. Now, one caveat with this is the city gets a financial statement audit, and then there is a separate audit. They call it the single audit or the federal audit over just the federal dollars. That single audit piece is still ongoing. There is a dedicated team in Eide Bailey that deals with the provider relief fund, so they're working on that piece. It's very specific guidance. They're the experts, so we let them do that. They're working through that, aiming to get that issued in the middle of September, and then the finance department will bring that to you for the results. So our audit timeline, we started planning and pre-work kind of on the back end in our world, November through April. So that looks like getting some of our structure of our work paper set up, having some initial conversations with the city. This was the first year we were auditors, so there was some initial setup to do there. So we did that in that time. Year-end testing happened in May and June. So we were on site the week of May 9th, but with remote technology, we were doing some of our field work kind of all through that timeline. And then we issued the report on June 27th. And getting there. So going forward, we're looking at if we can move that timeline up, because through the process, we found that the city was very prepared. Everything looked great when we got it. So we're going to look at moving that up potentially next year, but got it issued on the 27th. So then the big question, okay, you came, you audited, what were your results? What did you find? So when we talk about audit results, like I said before, the opinion is what we are giving. So you want to get a unmodified opinion. It's also dubbed a clean opinion. That's what you want. That is what the city received for their financial statements. That basically is our opinion saying, yep, it looks like it is professional, based on our professional opinion, everything's materially accurate, so on and so forth. So that's great news. The second kind of piece that goes along with it is, okay, we got a clean opinion. Did you have any findings? Because you can get findings with a clean opinion. The city got no material weaknesses and no significant deficiencies, which is great news. You didn't have any in 2020 either, so that's what you've had in the past. So now we're going to look at numbers and colors and graphs. The first one is cash and investments. So the first graph right here is cash. So this is the cash for the overall city. This does not include investments or restricted cash. And it's broken down by the proprietary type funds and then the governmental type funds. Proprietary funds are things like the health system, BMU, and then like liquor, airport, golf, those types. So the next graph is liquidity. So this really is looking at kind of your cash on hand to those things that you need to pay for. So you can see you were just below 4.5. Most governments stay above a 2.0 for this ratio, so you can see you're right there. And you can see it kind of dipped a little bit in 2019. That has a lot more to do with the investment balances than the debt balances, quite frankly. So we'll look at the investment balances on the next page. So then this page is looking at total cash and investments. So we already looked at that cash piece. Here's the cash and investments together. You can see they're just kind of a little bit on an upward trend. This isn't to say they need to be in a certain place. It's just showing you the 10-year comparison to where the city's been. So then digging into the details, the first kind of big fund of the city is called the general fund. That's where kind of all the things go that aren't parsed out to all the other pieces. So that's the fund that we like to focus on and talk about. So first off is the revenues for the general fund. We have them listed here. They're broken out into these big categories. The one thing that we got some notes from the finance department. So the one thing I wanted to point out is there is a little bit of a decrease in the intergovernmental from 2020 to 2021. You can see there was quite a big jump from 19 to 20. That's mainly those COVID funds that were received. There was ARPA funding received in 2021, but that wasn't spent. So that's not reflected here because that's, for accounting purposes, that's deferred to next year or whenever it's spent. So it's not in here. So that's the significant change there. And then expenditures, what did the city have as an outflow in their general fund? You can see the different categories here: capital outlay, general government, public safety, all of those. There wasn't a lot of significant changes here. A little bit of a difference in the culture and rec, again, mainly driven by that COVID activity. The revenues just fluctuated a little bit there. I work exclusively in the government world, so I've seen a lot of the different fluctuations with COVID, and I would say this is right in line with what I've seen other places too. So that was revenues and expenditures. At the end of the day, that comes down to a bottom line number for the general fund, which is what we call the fund balance. So that's kind of the remaining dollars. So you want to have a positive fund balance to contribute to your favorable bond rating. If you're looking to go out for some debt, you can get some investment income off of there. And then probably most importantly is it gives you a little bit of a cushion. That way, if something happens, there's a catastrophic event, there is FEMA sometimes is a little slow to get money, so you got to cover some expenses. If there's a natural tragedy, you can handle those as well with your fund balance. So there's different categories when it comes to the fund balance. So non-spendable, restricted, they're just listed here. I'm not going to get into the minutia of what they are, but I mainly just wanted to point out and say there is some categories in here. I know the city's really good about using their committed and assigned numbers. The unassigned number is the one that a lot of times we'll analyze when it comes to like, where are you at with your fund balance, which is what we'll look at in the next page as well. So here's the numbers, here's the colors. So these are the total fund balances. You can see it's broken out into those categories. There is a few things to point out here. There's a decrease in the unassigned from 2020 to 2021. There was the use of the City Council Priority Projects Fund. During 2021, $1.4 million was transferred to the CIP Fund for building. R&M, $522,000 was contributed to the Public Safety Center Capital Project Fund. There was an increase in the restricted number because of the receipt of those ARPA funds. That's the federal dollars that haven't been spent yet. So that's sitting right here in this restricted fund balance saying, hey, we've got it in here, we're going to spend it. All right. The next way to look at fund balance is it looks like big dollars. How do you break that down compared to where you're at? So you can see the way that we like to analyze it is fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. So you were at about 53.3% for 2021. There was a drop there from 2020, just with decreasing the increased expenditures to the pre-pandemic levels, some different activities. Typically, we see cities that have either 50% or greater as their target. So you're at that. What 53% means is that you have just over 6 months of operating expenditures in your fund balance at this point. So then the one other fund we wanted to highlight is the second penny sales and use tax fund, which you are all aware of what that is. So this is the same look and feel. Here's revenues for that fund. Really just pointing out it's kind of in an upward trend. The 2019 other, there's a little bit of a blue category there that sticks out a little bit like a sore thumb. That's the Surface Transportation Program grant funds that were recognized, and then those were used to pay for the first phase of the 22nd Avenue Improvements Project. So that is the revenues for that fund. And then coming down to the fund balances, this is what the fund balance in that fund looked like. There was an increase from 19 to 20 due to COVID-related budget cuts for capital projects, and then 2021. Really, that was a supply chain issue pushing back some projects. So you'll see some projects being paid for in 2022 or whenever those supply chain issues kind of come full circle and come back. The other item we want to highlight is part of the first year procedures that we did is we did the financial statement audit, and then we also had this thing called payroll data analytics. That was something that we like to add on to the first year as kind of a little bit of, hey, let me show you what else we can do here at Eide Bailey. So we have a data analytics group, and I am not the expert in this. I don't dig into big data or any of that, but basically what they do is they dive really deep into the minutia of the details, and they get a dump of all the payroll data, and they say, okay, let's look at what are the normal compared to what are the outliers in different things like total pay analysis, hours, deductions for employees, really what are those main key points, and let's show you what the outliers are from kind of the norm in those categories. So we had a meeting, we talked about this on July 12th with the finance group, so they got a good debrief in there. There was no significant anomalies noted, meaning there was really nothing that we came to them and we were like, hey, you need to do this immediately. But they've got that report and they're gonna start digging into the details of that. So if you have any questions there, they would be the ones that have that detail. And then really the kind of looking forward to the forefront, governments are, a lot of people think that governments are, the standards are there, the standards are set, you can kind of keep rolling with what you have. There's constant changes in government funding, in requirements. There's new federal grant programs coming with the ARPA fund, the American Rescue Plan Act, different federal funding that comes through. With each layer of federal funding comes a whole slew of compliance requirements. I think the latest compliance supplement was like 2,500 pages. So there's just a lot of requirements to follow there. The statements that dictate what's in the financial statements are called GASB statements. There's 2 new ones coming out, one for leases, one for essentially software, leases for software. Those are significant lifts on the finance team to really dig into the details, get those into the financial statements, make sure they're done right. And they learn about all that stuff through webinars and different things, and we're of access to them all year long. So if they have any questions, they can definitely let us know. But all that to say, your finance group has a lot on their plate, and it doesn't ever get any less. So they're doing a great job with that. So with that, any questions on anything in here, or maybe you took a good read of the 187 pages, something had a question?
Councilmember Hilton Byrne.
Thank you very much for presenting this tonight. We appreciate you doing the audit, and of course we know we have a great finance team, and so kind of expected a good report like the one you provided. My question is on the payroll data analytics piece. Mm-hmm. I'm curious to know if when you look at that, does that take into account, it says total pay analysis, does that take into account things like benefits and things of that nature as well?
Yes, there is some analysis in there. There's a ton of data that comes with that. So they've got the full report if you wanted to take a look at it too.
Great, thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments?
All right, my contact information is in there. Really just a big shout out to Eric, Ashley, Brenda, Gwen, that whole team. They did a great job and we were happy to work with them, so thank you.
Thank you, Jamie.